Welcome back to this next part. I thought I'd spend a little bit of time showing you how I detail the model. You might have seen in the time lapse how I broke out some of these lower rocker and front splitter parts. I did the same thing to the roof here. I created one big surface and separated this roof panel. So I thought I'd show you that with the headlight and kind of work around for separating polygons from your main object here. So I'll just quickly make this headlight surface and then show you how I separate it. So to fill this hole, what I did was I just extruded those edges to line them up with the character line I had drawn in the original sketch, and then added a couple loops to help make some four-sided surfaces, and then I just filled it up to the boundary and created this kind of undercut surface to help define the rest of that opening. It's pretty straightforward. It's what I've done with the rest of the model. So now that I have this headlight surface created here, I just filled in this hole and made the shape I wanted. What I'll do is grab the object and using Smart Move, I'll just copy and paste it. And you'll notice that slider there, it should snap every 6 inches or 10 millimeters, I believe. And once I get it stopped at that point, I'll just let go. So now I know that that part is going to be able to move back to its place. So what I'll do is just create a new layer, put it on that one. I'm going to hide the surfaces, and then I'll just come in and delete everything around it that I don't need. This way it'll just leave the surfaces for the headlight there, so I can start detailing that out. So that's what we want here. And then I'll just do bigger selections to get rid of all this stuff. So this is a bit of a workaround at the moment. I'm not sure if they're going to make an easier method to do this, but this is how I do it to separate out parts. So that's that. So we'll turn the surface back on. You have to do the same thing actually for your original surface there. So I'll just come back in and delete the opposite, and I'll just delete the surfaces of that headlight that I created. That way we can fill that hole with that piece. So you'll just want to be careful and make sure you select just the faces you want to delete. You don't delete anything else. There's always undo. So that's that. So we'll turn this back on. I'm going to grab it and change the color. We'll just use the same gray, and then when I slide it back, we'll see it stop at 6, and now it's back in its original spot. So we'll just turn on smoothing for these. Oops. There we go. And we'll just crease this here. There's that. Oh yeah, you've got a crease there just to get that to be sharp. So that's the headlight, and now if I needed to adjust any of this, I can come and start grabbing these points. I think that looks pretty good. So again, that's how you can make different parts. So like I've got this separated here. So that'll be beneficial when you're separating out components for color breakup and part separation and stuff like that. So that's that part there. I thought for this series I'll cover a few more details, so I'll make a wheel for us. So I've got this wheel already here, but I'm just going to delete it and we can start over. That's a tire. We'll just delete that as well. So we'll just start by taking the revolve tool here, half pulling on the trigger and setting the axis there, and then I'll just draw out a shape, and then we'll come in and edit it just so we can fit it to this space here. I'll just change this a little bit more, add a point, and we'll get it centered in our wheel arch. I like to just kind of line it up with the top there, and then I'll come in and just make it a smidge smaller. That looks pretty good. The wheel arch isn't quite round. I think this needs to come up here, down. We'll just get it to fit around that tire a little bit more. That's not too bad. I think that'll work. Maybe it needs to be a little bit smaller. We'll just move it up. And we'll just see how it looks in the rear as well. That's pretty good compared to that tire that's already there. So yeah, so this is the start of the wheel. I'm just going to add a little bit of detail to this tire here, just to give it a little different section. Why is that not adding a point? There we go. And we can adjust this as we make it. And then actually what I'm going to do here, we'll put it on our tire layer. And we'll just make that visible. I'm just going to extrude off of this one more point so I know that that tire is mostly straight, and then I'll add a couple just for the back side. We'll give it a little bit of crown, just to give it a little bit of shape. That looks pretty good. And now we can start making the wheel. So I'm going to stay with the revolve tool. I'll make the rim of the wheel itself. Maybe we'll go with we'll just go with the same color for now. You can see here that is a little off because I moved the tire around. So to recover that axis, hover over your revolve that you've already made. So in this case, the tire. So it turns red. And then with your left hand, you're going to let half pull on the trigger, and that axis widget will pop up, and you just hover near it and it'll snap the revolution axis to that point. Oops, there we go. So now when I make the rim, I know that it's in the same place as that tire. So let's just edit this. We're going to use the multi-edit and just edit these together. And I'm just going to make that sharp, and we'll just come in like that. I think that looks pretty good. You can always spend as much time as you want making that whatever shape you desire. And we'll just do that. And maybe this comes up. We'll make that pretty thin. So now it's just a matter of sketching out wheel designs. I like to sometimes block it in with the volume tool. I'll turn on polar symmetry. We'll make it a 5-spoke here, and we'll just draw it out. So you can start making shapes and editing them however you want. This might be a good way to block in some stuff. We'll make a dark one, kind of using it as volumes to kind of get that there. Maybe that's a bit too chunky. We'll make this spoke thinner. Delete that. You can also use the ink tool or the stroke tool, whichever one you want. Maybe I'll use the ribbon stroke so I can manipulate that a little bit more. Let's just make sure that that's on the same axis. That's good. Yeah, what do we want to do? This is really just up to you. Do whatever you want. Here, the ribbon tool is good because you can make like these very different type shapes. So for the next minute or so, I just do a little bit of a time lapse while creating this wheel here. It gets a little bit repetitive, so I don't want to waste a lot of time going over it. But it's pretty much just using the stroke tool, switching between the ribbon functionality and then going to the volume tool as well. You know, those tools are great because you can change different spoke numbers, so that's something you can play with and see which one best fits your design. I also added a little bit of blackout behind the wheel just to help hide anything that might show through, just to kind of fill in the space. again, yeah, just playing with the shapes. So it's really, really designer's choice on this one. Adding little details for the center cap, and it's really up to you what you want to add to this model. So the next thing I like to do once I have it all sorted out is start organizing it. This will help for breaking it up for visualization here in a bit. So I've got the layer for wheel. I don't think I have anything on that. And I've got tire. We'll change this one to wheel bits. This will just be, oops, bits. This will just be some of these inner pieces. So we'll just grab these. So that'll be the white parts. And then the center cap here. Wheel bits. I've got this layer here. That's the headlight. I'll actually change that. So this is really just separating your pieces into manageable layers so you can access them easier, and it'll help when you export if you're bringing it into visualization software. So I'm just going to go through the model and organize some of these pieces here real quick. So I'll just time lapse through that. So this only takes about 20 seconds, this time lapse. So we'll get back into modeling in a second here. But this is pretty much just to help organize the file again. So it's easier to find things while you're setting up the file, maybe for your export, or if you're painting it and trying to do some visualization within Gravity Sketch. And now what I can do is just I'll just lock all these other layers that I don't want. So we'll just leave the wheel and tire layers active. So that way when I hover over them, I can, using Smart Move, copy and paste them to the rear. And then we'll just come take a look there. And that looks pretty good. Yeah, that's not too bad. So I've got the wheels and tires where I want them. They've got symmetry on, so now we can revolve around. Not too bad. One other thing I like to do is when I get this ready for visualization, I'll put some blackout surfaces like in the wheel arches, and inside the grill and intakes areas. This way it kind of helps close off some of those areas so you don't have anything reflecting through the underside of the vehicle. So I'll just do that now. I'm going to use the same process I did for the headlight, where I'll extrude some surfaces from the surrounding area, and then I'll duplicate and so delete the surfaces that I don't need. So I'll do that now. So this is the same process I did before, where I just copied the object, delete all the faces that I don't want, and extrude out the shape that I do want to keep. That way I can start applying materials to it to fill in that gap. So now we can make those black. That's, yep. So now we've got this blackout surface underneath there. Let's, one thing I'm going to do is just to sharpen this up is add crease on this bottom here. And same with here. And on the back as well, just to get rid of this sort of rounded edge right there. And that works. So now when you look at the model, you'll see black inside the wheel arches, or the wheel openings there. And then for the other openings, what I'm just going to do is I'm going to name this body blackout. Blackout. Can I not make anything longer? Whatever. Okay, so what I'll do for that is we'll just come over to the surface tool. We'll draw out, and I'll just fill in these here just to block that out. And we'll come in and edit that. That looks pretty good. We'll do the same thing here. This way that's just covered in. Oops. Just trying to make it so I don't see anything from different angles there. And then we'll do the same thing here. That's that. Oh, I have this big hole that I'll fill in as well. I'll put a taillight in there, I think. I think what I'll do. So what I'll do for the rear, I have that sketch there. This one here. I'm just going to duplicate this. I'll put it in its own layer. Call it Taillight. Find active layer. We'll put this back here. What I'm going to do is change the shape of it. So I can start making this surround. So again, I'm going to speed up through this part a little bit. Here I'm just using that stroke tool that stroke that I made before for the sketch line, and I've just flattened it out by changing the shape within the stroke editor. And here I'm just kind of moving the points around and playing with the rotation of them, just to kind of get that shape to kind of do what I want it to. Adjusting the black inner to kind of change the boundary a little bit. And then I start pulling out a surface to create a lens that'll cover the rest of the taillight. And then I crease it just to give it a little bit of form here. Again, this is kind of up to you. This is design stage. I'm just trying to fill in the taillight with some shapes. So you'll see here I start to use another surface. That's going to be like a chrome backing, I think, for the taillight inner. And then I start using the stroke tool again to kind of make inner details. You know, this is just a sketch model, so this is really just kind of making shapes that I think fit the outer shape and the design of the vehicle there. And again, just using the same shape by duplicating it and adjusting it to fit that opening. You'll also notice that while I'm creating all these shapes, I'm also creating layers to kind of put all these parts on. So like for this headlight, I'm going to start making an inner surface or a bucket for it. So I'm going to duplicate the headlight again, just like I did to create the lens itself. And then I'll extrude off the back of it some surfaces so I can start making that bucket. This is just to close off the inner of the headlight and give it some dimensionality. So here's that process there. Again, just extruding edges and combining them. You can see I can start layering the lens on a different layer and making it transparent. And then now I'm just filling in that hole just to kind of help give me somewhere to put some of the pieces in the headlight. This doesn't have to be too pretty just because it's on the inside, so it doesn't really matter. Now I realize that the lens went through the tire there, so I have to adjust it a little bit. It's probably not a realistic placement of that bucket or size, but for this sketch, it's totally fine. Now you'll see I'm going to use the stroke tool again after I organize my layers a little bit. So I start to make a DRL in there that kind of traces the boundary of the headlight. Again, just the stroke tool, just trying to add a little bit of detail. maybe make a little reflector on the side here, and then I'll start duplicating that shape again and scaling it just to give some sort of level of detail in there. It's just really to fill in the headlight. Again, the design is up to you. Make it do whatever you want. So now I start playing around with the radial tool and the shape of it within the headlight. It's got a couple of different presets that might be interesting. I think eventually I don't really like what I'm seeing there, so I end up switching over to the stroke tool here, just to kind of create my own shapes that I think are a little more sympathetic to the shape of that headlight bucket. And again, same as the taillight, I'm rotating those strokes. I made them into ribbons, so they feel like they've got a little more depth to them and a little more shape. And then again, just copy and paste the shape just to make like another inner detail. And then on this one on the outside, I made a new shape just to make it a little bit longer to fit that hole there. And then same thing, just adjusting the rotation of the vertices just to kind of help with the shape, just to get it doing what I want. And now I use the volume tool actually inside there to create like a lens. It might give it a nice little effect for the headlight when it's rendered. But those are just small details you can add as you want. So now I'm going to get into creating some more details. These are going to be the cut lines for the vehicle. These just add a little bit more detail to it. Again, they're not going to be perfect to where they need to be. It's really just to kind of help with the visualization process. So I'm really just using the stroke tool in point mode and just placing the points as near as I can to the surface. I'm really just eyeballing them just so I can kind of roughly get an idea of where I want the cut line. This might be a good time to kind of go through different ideations on placement. You know, something like this fender is probably not realistic in where it is. It would probably have to cut through it. But for this concept sketch, I think it's totally fine. And then you can start adding in some of your bumper cut lines and details. Really to cover those sharp edges, I'm just adding a bunch of points close together and sticking them on top of the surface. And then here I'm just adding a cut line for the rocker. I also made the rocker and the bumper cut lines smaller, so I'll just edit the curve in the edit panel and make the size a little bit smaller, just because part gaps are going to be a bit smaller than shut lines like doors and hoods and stuff like that. Here I noticed something wrong with the headlights, so I just deleted it. And now I get into making the hood cut line. Again, just rough, using the stroke tool and putting points down. So I think that time I just drew it roughly in, and then I'll go back in and edit the points by hand. And to capture tighter areas, I'll just put a bunch of points close together, just so they lay close to the surface there. It's a little bit of back and forth, changing the different views and looking at it in different perspectives, just to see if all the lines are kind of doing what you want. So once you've got everything all detailed out with your headlight, taillight, cut lines, and any other details and stuff you want to make, much like I've been doing as I've been building this, I've just organized everything into layers and just assigned materials to all the different objects. This will be useful later on if you're exporting to a visualization software. I know Vred, it'll import an OBJ file based off of the color assignment. So I just make sure every object kind of has a different color or material applied to it. So maybe we'll make the tires a little darker. That way when we export it, we'll be able to organize our file and paint it or apply materials for that visualization. But if you're not going to be exporting it, you can also do some visual stuff within Gravity Sketch. So there's some new environments and stuff that they've created. So to access those, you hit the blue button, come down to the gear settings, and then over here, workspace, click that, and you'll see there's a bunch of preset environments. Let's just make this full size so we have something nice to look at. And Actually, what I do when I want to place stuff on the floor, I'll come into the settings and turn on vertical lock. That'll make sure I can place it on the floor, just so that shadow plane is pretty nice there. So we'll come back into the workspaces. You've got the flashlight here, so you can change the light angle. You can play around with that. And then you've got your preset environments. You've got the gray room, black room. You got the new warehouse. This is a pretty nice one. I only saw that this one recently, so this is pretty nice. You've also got the studio environment, but underneath that you've got these custom ones. So if you click on it here, you'll have a bunch of options to turn on shadows, turn them off. You've got your floor grid, if you want that on. I'm just going to leave it off for now. Actually, no, we'll turn it on. We'll leave it at that size. You've also got this HDR slider here that will help the reflections in the model. So you've got a couple different presets. We'll turn off gradient for there, so you can have a solid color. So that'll you can use the color picker to change that. You've also got the outdoor one built in, so that's just the reflection. And then you can change the color of the background environment as well. You've got the desert sky, and then you've got your zebra stripes if you wanted to do some reflection analysis and stuff like that. If you turn on gradient here and come over to scene reflections, when you change, you've got 3 different colors here. You can change the sky color. So we'll make that like blue. And they've got your horizon. You can change that color. Maybe we'll make it really dark, so you can see it's changing in the model as well. And then we'll change the floor color. Yeah, whatever. I don't know. Maybe we'll make it. Yeah, maybe it's in the desert or something like that. Make this a bit brighter. So you can see how that affects your model there. So you've got kind of 4 different ways, or 4 different tabs that you can customize. So these ones here, these buttons up here will determine kind of what settings you can have. So these are changing their overall environment to studio, to this panels one here, more like a light box type thing. But this flat color one will give you the option to do the gradient there. I find this one very useful. And then you can make a bunch of different preset ones. So if we go back to the flat color, we can turn on gradient, and we'll just play around with it. See, make something red or whatever. It's very, very cool. So you can do some new visual stuff in Gravity Sketch, and then come over to your snapshot and output whatever you want. You can play around with the field of view, so you can flatten it. You can change it to square. There's a couple different options there, and then hit OK, and that'll output snapshots. You can also teleport around the model. There's some new tools in the tool belt if you're on the tool belt beta. So if you hold your grip and flick your wrist, that'll bring up all these different tools here. The banana is the teleport. So if you grab that and then turn your joystick, you'll see little feet on the ground. That'll be the direction you're facing once you pull the trigger. So if you wanted to teleport around to the back of the vehicle. So if you're seated or something, or don't have a lot of room where you can walk around a full-size car, this is a good way to get different angles, so you can take different pictures and stuff like that. So we'll just take another snapshot. So anyway, so those are the new visualization tools within Gravity Sketch, and I hope that was a good overview of kind of how I detail out the model and get it ready for visualization. So I think the next part, I'll show you how I export from Gravity Sketch and bring it into Vred. It's an Autodesk tool. There's also some built-in VR functionality and a little more high-end visualization tools within that software that I'll show you. That'll just be a quick overview because it can get pretty complex. So again, I hope you enjoyed this, and check out the next video. We'll see you soon.